Thank you, councillors. Good morning. If we could please stand for the prayer. Councillor Plum, may you lead us in prayer this morning, please.
Almighty God, we acknowledge that we have a responsibility to look after your creation, especially this region we call Barcaldine Regional Council. We are conscious that our decisions are going to affect deeply the people we have come here to serve. Assist us to exercise respect for councillors, staff, and for the people of our region. Help us in this meeting to act wisely, justly, and intelligently in all our deliberations. Thank you, Lord, for the privilege of both leading and serving, and assist us to do these well. Amen.
Amen. Councillors, we have condolences today, unfortunately, too many, as always. The late Mrs. Jacqueline Crawford, formerly of Alpha, Mr. Peter Wilson, formerly of Garden Gully Alpha, and Mr. Lawrence Hack of Rockley Alpha. Are there any others? We can please observe a minute silence. Thank you. Just register the apologies for Paula, who's on leave. Note that other officers are not currently present, but will be during the course of the meeting. We'll take this opportunity to acknowledge our traditional owners and the custodians and their elders on the lands on which we meet, and their leaders both past, present and emerging, and in the spirit of reconciliation, and all other elders who may be present and their past and future leaders. Declarations of prescribed conflict of interest. Councillor Pickles.
Mr. Mayor, just this one.
The Mayoral Minute that will be introduced, that I've given you notice of recently, the Masonic Lodge.
Yes. And so Emma Mason, Mr. Mayor, they're interested to leave the room for the Mayoral Minute comes up.
The 3 Mayoral Minutes today, that'll be Mayoral Minute number 1. Mayoral Minute number 2 will be the Men's Shed Marlborough application. Mayoral Minute number 3 will be the Domestic Violence Initiative.
What's number 3, Mr. Mayor?
Will be a domestic violence, QPS Domestic Violence Initiative. Okay, so you will be dealing with it by leaving the room. The reason for your association is you are a member of the Masonic Lodge. Thank you. No further PCOIs that you haven't previously declared?
No, I don't think so.
Councillor Gleeson?
Don't believe so, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hanson?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, as I'm a member of the Masonic Lodge of Montavara, I'll address that one.
Mayoral Minute number 1, Councillor Hanson leaves as he is a member of that Masonic Lodge. He is addressing it by leaving the room. Okay, we have been provided, thank you very much, Councillor Arthur. Although I can relieve you of 346 as that agenda item will now no longer be presented. Due to data not being quite ready for today.
Yep.
However, you have noted 352, proposed road closure due to close associate Michael Hallman's business impact, and 382, new amenities, Barcaldine, close associate of yours is the only supplier of concrete in town and the construction is to be undertaken by council. Michael Moore Transport. Associate. No more?
No, Mr Mayor, and I'll be leaving.
For both 352 and 382.
Correct.
Councillor,
Nothing on that, Mr Mayor.
any new ones? Does any councillor present believe any other councillor present may have overlooked a prescribed conflict of interest? Clear conflicts of interest, councillor Pickles.
Oh, I think I'm right, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Bassett. Councillor Haynes. Councillor Arthur.
No, Mr Mayor.
Councillor
No,
Plum.
Mr Mayor.
Councillor Roberts.
Yes, Mr Mayor, the previous one,
Ones that have been on record.
yeah, 3.4.2, the progress report, and I would prefer to stay in the room with that as
Sorry,
well as,
342.
I think it's 3.2.
Yes, it is 342, sorry. Okay.
And,
That is the current state, and so unless I hear a resolution to actually leave, that you'll be allowed to stay, because that's what we've previously resolved.
I also have a variable conflict of interest in 3.3.7, the proposed Barclay Regional Planning Scheme, considerations and submission of progressing plan making process. That's because of the Lake Dun Sculpture Trail again. I think it arises because consultation process identified during public consultation that there's an interest in recognising and protecting the sculpture trail as a drive tourist attraction, and so they're expanding that, they're going to expand that to include it, so I'll probably leave the room.
Okay, thank you.
Mr Mayor, can I just ask a question there, please?
Just hold a second. Sorry.
Yeah.
Give me a check.
So there's probably like the deciding on it. It's not.
That is correct. We are formally deciding today to submit it for ministerial approval. Councillor, can I just direct you to section 150EF, personal interest in ordinary business matters of the local government. The chapter does not apply in relation to a conflict of interest in a matter. The matter is section 1B is solely or relates solely to one, the making a planning scheme that applies to the whole of the local government area.
So even though that,
That's
specifically
my understanding, that
about
the planning
sculpture.
scheme for the whole of the council
It
area
captures-
is.
It's the same as setting the rates and things like that, it's for the
Yeah.
whole.
Sorry, so your question is?
Just because that is directed solely at the sculpture trail in that area. It doesn't matter.
No.
Because it's in this planning scheme.
It's part of the broader planning scheme, and that's defined as ordinary business. So personal interest in ordinary business does not apply if it's to do with the planning scheme,
Yeah.
budget. These are the exemptions. So
Yeah.
That-
So it should be okay.
my understanding is that conflicts of interest expressly do not apply at all, and you could choose not to participate, but you wouldn't be able to do so through a conflict of interest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's okay.
And that was my point,
I'll
Mr. Mayor.
withdraw.
Thank you. Sorry,
So
councillor.
that was my point for Councillor Rogers, is that I think everyone in the room, every councillor in the room would have some sort of conflict with regards to the town plan.
Well, through the rezoning, for example, we could be, a councillor could contest that their property, you know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
we'd end up in a situation where we would maintain a quorum. So I hadn't actually foreshadowed that, but I'm pleased that I could put my hand on it straight away, because I was sure it was. Does any councillor believe that we've interpreted that wrong?
As long as it applies to the whole, it would be different if we were rezoning a particular area that affected, a singular area,
Well-
not,
Just on that, councillor, I don't know that it does.
because the next one does say an amendment to it.
That's right. It is solely or relates to either one, making a planning scheme, or two,
But if
amending
we
a
were to
planning scheme.
rezone a single lot, say owned by a council.
Yeah, that could be an issue, couldn't it? Anyway, in this case, we're fortunate in that it is the whole planning scheme, so we just. Right. I don't believe I have any. Does any councillor present believe in any other claim? Oh, did you have any more? Sorry.
No, that's all.
Sorry. Any other, does anyone believe anyone's overlooked a potential declarable conflict of interest? Thank you, councillors. Admire you once again for the way in which you deal with this as a matter of routine business rather than a point of contention and debate, which is not common in other councils, so well done. You shouldn't need to be congratulated for doing it right. However, unfortunately, councils, the media and others line up to smack councillors who do it wrong, so I like to commend you for applying your diligence, even if at times it is perhaps over diligent. At least it is protecting both the integrity of your own office and also the integrity of this room's decisions, which can then not be called into question because we have given very adequate and due consideration to individual conflicts of interest. I think we are definitely leading the state, certainly in regional terms, and it's through your own application to effort. Can I have somebody please move my report be received?
Excuse me, Mr.
Oh, the minutes, we better do it. Sorry, thank you, Deb. Can I have somebody move that we receive the 15 November minutes? Thank you, Councillor Plum. Seconded, Councillor Peoples. Those in favour? Carried. 7-0. Comments, questions, errors, omissions or alterations? There being none, Councillor Gleeson moves that they be confirmed. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hanson. Those in favour? Carried. 7-0. And I actually think I've skipped something else as well. Petitions. Should always stay on the front page until Debbie tells me to turn. Does any officer or councillor present have a petition that is in the appropriate style that they wish to present? Being none, thank you. No confidential reports today. My report. Can I have somebody move it to be received? Councillor Peoples, seconded Councillor Arthur. Those in favour? Carried. Councillors, my humble apologies. These reports were, last week was absolute madhouse for everybody. Please add to this that I met with the Minister for Energy and Renewable Energy, the Honourable Mick de Brenni. I also met with the Minister for Water, Regional Manufacturing, the Honourable Glenn Butcher, MP. And on top of that was a meeting with the Assistant Minister for Energy and Renewable Energy, the Honourable Lance McCallum. Who else? Oh, the Treasurer, sorry, the Honourable, I can't forget him, he's the one with the money. The Honourable Treasurer of Queensland, Cameron Nick MP. Those meetings, coupled with the meeting with the Premier and Deputy Premier last week, were part of a high-level delegation of resource councils that LGAQ and ourselves compiled. Present with me was Mayor Brett Otto, Mayor Danielle Slade, Mayor Kerry Hayes, Mayor Ian Baker, Mayor Matt Burnett, and Mayor Nev Ferrier from Banana, along with some of their CEOs. We met individually with each minister, although Minister de Brenni and Assistant Minister McCallum met combined with us, and the Treasurer and the Deputy Premier overlapped as well. The purpose of the meeting was to further progress two things: government policy, but also local government advocacy around transitioning regional economies as we move through the transition over the next 10, 15 years around the shift from the burning of fossil fuel for energy to the use of renewables, and what the impact will be on our communities in terms of future jobs and growth, as well as the skill sets that will be required to administer a different type of technology, as well as what the difference in the makeup of communities that either were reliant, are reliant, or had the potential to be reliant on resource extraction for economic development or sustained economic activity in their areas. Now, obviously, we fit into the latter of those three categories in terms of resource extraction, but right at the cusp of a developing area for renewable energy generation in terms of both wind and solar. It was single-handedly the best 6 hours I've had in terms of positive engagement with the government, and I've very seldom been part of a negative engagement. It's just this one was so very positive. The strategies of all of those councils, but 2 of which are heavy coal, like some of the biggest coal local governments in Australia, in the Central Highlands and Isaacs currently, but the positive energy towards understanding that, like it or not, the world economy, and with that the Queensland and Australian and the Central West economy is going to transition over the next little while. That's a fact now. We need to be ready ahead of the curve. Some of the strategies that will be put in place as a result of meetings last week won't see full realisation for 20 years, in some cases 30 or 40 years, because metallurgical coal will still be mined for a considerable period of time. All levels of government recognise that. But in terms of what it means in positioning our local government, which was, one of the smaller local governments in the room, in terms of positioning us to be part of that transition and recognising us as an equal in that sense, was extremely rewarding. Not directly linked to our renewable energy zone type activity, because that focuses on manufacturing locally, which is great for our jobs, but that does fit into the broader how the Queensland government views regional Queensland being a part of that transition. So those meetings were pulled together. We all played an active and equal role. Each of us were delegated different meetings to lead. Mayor Terry Hayes was an instrumental spokesperson for the group right through, as was Marianne Baker. I was fortunate enough to be part of the lead discussion with the Premier, but all ministers openly and actively engaged with us, and there will be follow-up meetings and coordination with that same group of mayors and that same group of ministers on an ongoing basis. One of the key outcomes as a result of LGAQ motion 73 was for the creation of a regional transition authority, which is to be a local government involved process to discuss the impact of state government decisions and to influence the outcome of state government approvals on a through a place-based lens. So the solution for Collinsville, for example, may look totally different to the solution for Biloela or Barcaldine. And that each decision to approve a new wind farm or a new solar farm needs to be taken in context of its impact on a local economy, just like the decision to approve a new manufacturing hub or the transition away from a coal mine and into some other type of activity in an area needs to be viewed through what's best fit for that area. Of course, some of the other local governments have entire towns that have been built, maintained and sustained by resource companies, and I mean places like Glendon and Thierry, which are real quandaries for both local and state governments as to what do those communities look like in 15 to 20 years' time as they transition away from or those coal mines reach end of life anyway. So unfortunately, because we were so hectic here, I had to attend that alone, but I do intend, following our debrief on Friday, LGAQ will pull together a summary of the outcomes, and I will circulate that and make that document a public record in the January meeting. Unless there were the odd conversation, part of the conversation that we had that was confidential, but that won't make the outcomes document anyway. I'm happy, there's nothing that was had that was in any way off the reservation. It was really important, I think, in terms of positioning our council as part of a group of councils who embrace the state's policy and have accepted that their mandate for delivering renewable energy generation is real, and instead of fighting that or objecting to that, we want to be a part of that because it in its own way has the potential to deliver significant economic development for our region, both in a short-term capacity and medium to long-term. The day before that meeting, if you go up 3 dot points from the bottom, meeting with the Premier, was a meeting with Racing Queensland. I was invited to be part of the panel alongside some veterinarians, architects and Queensland racing integrity officials to discuss the future of racing facilities in Queensland and their co-location with important community infrastructure that's maybe not traditionally linked to racing, to give facilities a fit for purpose use, right, whether it's in the middle of Brisbane or outback Queensland, and how that strategy is developed. Racing Queensland is currently reviewing its infrastructure plans for the next 10 years, and that strategy session was an important part of that. It was a very good meeting. Insight into the similarities in a lot of ways between urban infrastructure and country infrastructure. We always think of the demand profiles being different. The only thing that's really different is the economy of scale, where we might have 2,000 to 5,000 people, they have 20,000 to 50,000 people, but they all want the same thing. They want a unique experience. It's got to be versatile, so used for conferences midweek or engagement and wedding parties outside of racing time. Patrons want to be able to be involved in the event, feel included and welcome, not excluded and secluded. So I'm hoping that as the infrastructure plans at Racing Queensland continue to enhance, and they've had some good ones in terms of funding for the last few years, but we look at these facilities such as Barcaldens, which is a true multi-user facility, and that may be able to A, be enhanced, but B, where it is leading the way in some ways, set a bit of an example for other areas. Obviously a very good network opportunity as well. The week before that, so that was a couple of nights in Brisbane last week. The week before that, Shane and I attended Brisbane again for meetings with the Outback Regional Road Group, our Water and Sewerage Alliance, Regional Pest Management and the Rapid Board, as well as the Friends of Rapid. Morning, Samad. It was a good week. Our sideline meeting on the side of that, other than just a few general catch-ups with ministerial chiefs of staff, was limited to, we had a without prejudice chat with a designer to have a look at what options we could do, or an architect, sorry, not a designer, to have a look at some opportunities to add to executive office space here. Jenny lined that up for us, yeah, so we'll have, there'll be more detailed briefing for councillors when we've got something to go by. No, completely without prejudice, non-committal. It was just that we need to get the ball rolling because at the moment we've got staff all cramped up and living on top of themselves. I did overlook one meeting last week, sorry. I met with Minister Mark Verner briefly, and his Chief of Staff and the Chief Biosecurity Officer and his Chief Policy Officer regarding the consultation document that's out there at the moment around the review of the Brands Act, which is the first one since 1974, and it's the first major legislative review of the Brands Act since 1915. What's proposed by the government is a substantial increase or a lifting of fees for both applying to register a livestock breed, as well as the ongoing annual return for that breed, which keeps your right to use it. There was a concern in some quarters that it was an attempt by the government to follow the lead of other states in preventing livestock from being branded. I can categorically, emphatically, 100% rule that out now as a result of that meeting. The government is seeking to modernise its software that administers the brands database. At the moment, they have 8 full-time staff doing nothing other than registering and returning brands, and they can't keep up with the technology without technology to progress them. That technology comes at a cost, which the government's going to underwrite at the beginning of the process and then have paid off through our annual returns. It felt like deja vu, Councillor Gleeson, for another little hobby of yours and mine, the writing of software for a not-for-profit sporting organisation, and the bottomless bucket of money that will obviously follow with that. However, it is an attempt to streamline, and the other important legislative change that's proposed is relaxing the mandate that all livestock must be branded. It will become optional, so for those producers who wish to not brand their cattle, that now, will, if the legislative change occurs, that will be legal, whereas currently the situation in Queensland is all livestock over a certain weight and or age must be branded before sale. So that option is an important part of the legislation. So that meeting was positive, and I will be putting out some press to support the government's change on that in the coming days.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor, how are you going to identify, is it going to be by a tag?
And there's, yes, basically they're going to rely on their tags or ear notching, so ear marks.
Yeah.
I've spoken for a long time. Any questions about any of my meetings?
Mr. Mayor, the beef corridors steering committee, everything seems to be still progressing along reasonably well.
Yeah, it does. The chief focus now is we're waiting for the federal government to enact the National Partnership Agreement with the state, which is the funding mechanism that releases the money to be spent. Whilst that's underway, there's two prongs. One is ensuring ongoing state support because there's a need for them to commit 20% of the funding as well. I mean, obviously the private conversations we've had are very positive in that respect, but it's not currently budgeted, so we're leveraging to get that funded in the 2023 state budget. And then there's significant work being undertaken by our technical groups, and CEOs have commenced involvement in this as well to facilitate exactly how we're going to do this, what joint procurement strategies could be effective, what time frames realistic, what kilometres of work can we undertake each year, what percentage of it will be undertaken, or do local governments have the appetite to do themselves, and which sections of road may be contracted out. Are there technical design issues that can be duplicated? Once again, in a procurement assistance package. Most of those issues affect the more eastern local governments that are part of this. It's probably just situation normal for us, just go and build a bitumen road as an extension of the work we've already been doing. And I know that sounds flippant and easy, but that's really what it is. A lot of the work that we've undertaken in recent years on Clement Alpha Road is just a replication of the same design methodology, which lowers design costs substantially because it's a construct as designed previously. Tambo Road will probably require for us the most design work because we haven't been on that road recently. Our crews and our design people are all new in that respect, and it's probably been earmarked as the first mover as well because of that, so that the Clement Alpha stuff is somewhat easier and there's less of it to do for us. So any movement on Clement Alpha will probably be in the Isaacs Regional Council area first as a continuity of already secured funding from other means. That's not locked in stone, Councillor, but that's the mayors have sort of intimated our support to let Isaacs move on Clement Alpha first, and we would focus our efforts on Alpha Tambo. And there's probably a local reason for that as well. Our people that use that road have had less activity in terms of capital expenditure on that for a substantial period as we've been focusing with TMR's direction on the northern end. And also there's still the issue around the Belander River Bridge that needs to be sorted. So I would realistically expect that's probably 4 to 5 years away, any movement on that end, in which time I would expect that we would be very close to completed the sealing of Alpha Tambo, or certainly a very large share of that would be done. As I said yesterday during our budget meeting, I wouldn't anticipate too much work till 24, 25, and the real big ramp up would be 25, 26.
Thank you.
That's all.
Went well.
Is there
That's right.
like
Needed.
this rapid is
It's in the road.
like, looking at the ones like they
Yeah, there is probably the biggest positive issue that was discussed at length during the RAPID meeting was a presentation from the Country University Centre. RAPID is actively pursuing a hub and spoke model for the RAPID area where we can see Country University Centres established right throughout the Central West, all under the guise and the leadership to minimise administration of one centre. The chair of RAPID, whilst I was impressed last week because I couldn't do both things, he undertook a tour of the Ballon and Maranoa Country University Centres and had a look at Maranoa doesn't have the hub and spoke as well established as Ballon does, but Ballon's got a big centre and an outreach centre that's much smaller in terms of its administration costs, but still quite well attended. So the idea for those councillors who haven't seen presentations on Country University, and we will have a brief from the Australian chair of that at a future meeting. The idea is to allow a person to undertake either TAFE or tertiary studies in their own town at a university of their choice. So it provides the physical infrastructure, people who can provide guidance with lesson planning. They may not be subject matter experts, but they can get a Zoom machine working for you, provide office space, provide printing, proofreading, a bit of tutor type activities. And the idea is for people who either don't wish to leave their area, as in they're school leavers and they're not comfortable leaving to go to university but still wish to undertake tertiary training, or professionals that are already in our area to undertake further upskilling. So to secondary, tertiary qualifications or masters of business, that sort of stuff. So for doctors, nurses, engineers that want to do a bit of extra study, they can have a structured environment to do that in. These are rapidly growing in both numbers of them and numbers of people attending them. COVID was a massive help, of course, because people, couldn't in some places attend universities, but since, even though the pre-COVID era, they weren't in big numbers, the post-COVID era, numbers are climbing through the roof. No concrete plans yet. The most likely scenario is that Longridge will be the hub with spokes coming off Longridge. There may be other reasons for that, but where that might mould into some different direction. We haven't had a formal discussion around it. That's an informal feeling, but that Country University Centre is probably the biggest advocacy thing that we've got going at the moment, and we've got the financial capacity at Rapid to facilitate that as well. So we haven't yet had the meeting with CUC here. Flooding, in New South Wales impacted their ability to visit us, but they're going to come and visit Barcaldine and Blackwall and Barcoo in the first quarter of next year. And when they're here, I'll make sure we're all invited to that, so that presentation of what they're planning to offer can be portrayed. The beauty of what they're posing is for council to use its existing facilities. In our case, we wanted to, all 5 of our towns, to provide this university space, whether it's libraries, council office space, council boardrooms, unused buildings in our communities we can rent or hire, adjunct rooms as part of town halls, all of these facilities that are different, unique things that could be used for the benefit of the community through this Country University Centre. And they're revenue generating, like each of these university centres generate fees. They're not for profit, but they're not a loss-making entity. They're real, and they're a good employment generator as well, and a massive attraction and retention piece for both young people and qualified professionals, such as those in the medical profession, which in our case we do have trouble attracting. But when you look at the medical professional uptake in areas like Balonne and Maranoa since the inception of these Country University Centres, their recruitment has just skyrocketed because people know they can come and work, but also be supported in their future learning or upskilling of, say, nursing degrees or aged care certificates and stuff like that. The benefit for council would also be high in that if we have people who wish to upskill their own tertiary qualifications or receive certificates or diplomas, we would be able to use these centres for our staff and use that as a bit of an attraction piece as well. So I'm really excited about it, and the mayors are all buying in 100%. The collective supports. I actually can see the only issue being a tug of war, whoever wants to host the hub, but the outcomes for all our communities will be substantial.
Mr. Mayor, may I just make a comment on that?
Certainly.
Though that gentleman has actually been to Barcaldine.
He did
He
call
came
through,
in
yeah.
last year. We
Yes.
actually did a workshop down at the Globe.
Yep.
And it was the presentation he gave was very interesting because it actually talked to students they were on the presentation in those areas who basically said that if it wasn't for that being offered there, they wouldn't have gone further. And I think it was pretty much focused on the Balonne one in Queensland. It was a very, very good presentation, and He's actually a very interesting gentleman to listen to, so the concept is amazing, yes.
Incredibly driven individual. Like, he's got no tertiary training. He's just a farmer from southern New South Wales. But he saw a need for people to undertake that because they were losing young people. And his model, he travels at his own expense all over Australia selling the concept of the Country University Centre. Just Google it. If you haven't heard of it, just Google CUC and it'll pop up. It's an incredible initiative, and his governments of both persuasions are actively supporting it. The Assistant Minister Chisholm, Anthony Chisholm, will be the lead for this. He's the Federal Assistant Education Minister and is a major supporter of the CUC model. Yes, he's actually been to Barcaldine twice, he tells me, Jenny, but formally meeting with us in terms of setting up one of these. That hasn't happened yet, but it's not a matter of if we would support this, I would view, councillors, it's how quickly we can get it all up and running. It's really positive stuff.
I can't remember who were all there, but there was a good group of people at his presentation, and everyone was very enthusiastic about what he was putting forward. And like you said, he was just like one of us who's created something on a needs basis. Comes from a small community. It's a smallish community.
It's small, although we would think it's large, about
Yes.
15,000, but yeah, small in terms of regional New South Wales.
Yeah.
So yes, definitely, that's probably what I would say is the major project that Rapid's pursuing at the moment. There's a number of other ongoing business items, but that one's a very substantial package of work. There's also, it's also undergoing a regional waste strategy initiative that Morgan Grold is leading, and with support from LGAQ, striking a few hurdles because of the lack of waste, to be honest. Any other question? All right. 331. Can I have somebody move Shane's report, please? Councillor Arthur, seconded Councillor Plum. Those in favour? Carried 7-0. Shane.
Councillors, before you is my last few weeks in review. Like the Mayor, it was a fairly busy few weeks. What we've done, obviously, from the community engagement forums is started that process of taking on board what we've heard and what we've seen, started to build some programs. We'll have a good report coming back, and we'll actually put that out to the community so they have the feedback. The Rapid meeting, as the Mayor said, was very, very good down there. A bit of time with the planners, and you'll see later on with the planning scheme that comes to the table. There's work going on with the planners, and they've done a great job along with our staff. Certified agreements now has been signed, waiting for the Commission to approve it. We expect that early in the new year. We've also, last meeting we discussed about EAP for our staff. That one has been now finalised, so we can get that moving. When we have a look at our maintenance programs, you've heard from yesterday from our budget preliminary discussions that we've started looking at maintenance across our road network, looking at maintenance across the board. We did already undertake or started the IT and cyber review. They were engaged recently, so we'll have a report back from them from their initial findings and some steps and roadmaps to come out. Interesting just how in depth they got in such a short amount of time. And what else? We've got the community care services. We know that that's been a bit of a challenge. We've recruited in that space and we've got some staff applied, so we look like we'll be able to hit that one running with some good quality people on the ground to service our community. I'm very excited about where that'll go, but I'll provide a full report on all the engagements that have been put in place. We've got a new leader in that space. He started last week and hit the ground running. Lovely gentleman who will be very supportive for our community. Our safety audit, we had the CACS audit. In acronym, it's basically a quality assurance audit for our main roads jobs. They went outside, we've got through that one quite well. I'll provide that report next meeting as well. That was a quality assurance process, which was a couple of minor issues, but generally very good. Incorporating that one was our external workplace health and safety audit. That report will come back in January too, where we identified the gaps, and we're closing those gaps as we go. So councillors would have seen some examples of that. But last meeting we had, Mayor and I met with the main roads with Gav Hill and staff.
Sorry, I left that one there.
We have a really good working relationship with TMR and with Gavin, so anytime we get together and talk about our strategy where we're moving forward was good. And they would probably confirm that relationship is strong and we're getting some good marks. I'll wait for Chris to talk about his report for our programs and our reporting, getting our quiddles in on time. The district manager and our asset manager myself met with it's a long title, isn't it? The sports tourism engagement. They did come out and talk about future opportunities. That was a really good chat as well. Chris can talk about it later on, but we met with JJ Richards to look at some, and we're basically trying to work through the issues we've flagged for the last few months. We've had some wins in that space, while not completely, everywhere we want to go. JJ's is working with us to get some solutions. While we're away, DESBIT, or the Department of Employment and Small Business, invited me to present to that group at their annual conference. Not that it's a highlight of their day listening to me for half an hour, but there was a big discussion on regional communities, our businesses, support that they need, how we're struggling out here with recruitment, retention, finding people in the area, how business is going, to get a bit of a snapshot of our region. That was really good question and answer sessions there. We took the opportunity while I was down in Brisbane to meet with the Small Business Commissioner as well. Just generally that opened the door for an invite to this region to support our small business and council's interest in working together. That was good. And obviously we've been recruiting well and we've had a lot of interest in a lot of positions, so we should be able to provide some reports on those gaps that we filled in that space. You'll see later on in the report we've got the annual report and the financial statements. Staff work really well, and I'd like to thank Simon as well. He's done a heap of work to bring that together, and you'll see we've had good results and the reporting's very good. And generally, we had another round of COVID influenza. We've got a few staff struggling, but what we find in our workforce is that when some people have gone down, everyone else steps up to support, so I'm really proud of what they've done in that space. And at the end of it, I guess I can do it now, is just for those watching and for council and staff and communities, Merry Christmas and have a safe and good break.
Questions, councillor? Councillor Plum.
Mr Mayor, Shane, you both met with the Maymo's department. Was the question brought up about the speed limit on Oak Street or any of that?
Yes.
And by the look of your face, Mr Mayor, it wasn't good.
No outcome. It was just raised with them and they're going to
Oh.
investigate it and come back to us with what they think is appropriate.
Oh, right, yeah, okay, yeah.
So it was brought up at a high level meeting and then it was further flagged during the working group discussion. There hasn't been outcomes yet.
Ongoing.
We've got a number of issues in front of TMR at the moment, including the development application for the BRES, which has been reviewed concurrently by the state, and they will work on a number of issues for us, including some ongoing road safety issues, but their resources are as limited as ours. There's only so many fires they can put out at one time. So we're trying to work through things methodically. The DA has time frames attached to it, so we've got to get that done as an urgent matter of business, but the road safety working group certainly has Oak Street here and Shakespeare Street, Cap Highway Alpha as two priorities.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the Department of, or your desk, Employment, Small Business and Training, do they have any insight as to why we're struggling, not just us, like rural Queensland is struggling so much? Like when on the East Coast you've got higher rents, higher housing pricing and pressures, increase in interest rates, why we're still struggling just to get people to come off that eastern seaboard?
It's across the board, even on the coast, they're struggling to find staff too.
Yep.
But, there's no silver bullet for any of this. So, but one thing they were talking about is that there's funding out there for our small businesses that are fatigued and tired, so they're looking at coming out in the early new year.
Yep.
Probably January, February, to sit down with business, any small business, any business,
Yeah.
and try and work through those challenges and offer support. So And a lot of the times as a business, we may be struggling, but we don't actually put a hand up and say we need some help. So they're looking at it in those channels. But yeah, there is no silver bullet. So.
And further to that, like community groups and our non-for-profits, are they recognised as a small business as such for like assistance from that department, or are they, where do they?
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, I can't give you their criteria.
It probably depends on what they do. Like if they're running a coffee shop, so let's say the Australian Workers Heritage Centre, for example, would, whereas the Buckhorn Rugby League Club would not.
Okay, thank you.
I guess the answer is what we're trying to do is open the door for anyone that wants to
Yeah.
come and support. We want to provide that avenue. We also can facilitate those discussions.
Jane, I have a question similar to this. Have we had a chance to further, and I was just reading some legislation, then you may have touched on this. Have we been able to progress the Small Business Commissioner involvement, or?
The discussion we had with her while we were down in Brisbane was that she'll be here to help us whenever we need her.
Have we formally signed up to the council, the Small Business Friendly Council?
We haven't, and that's, she's ready to do that when we are too. So they do run a program about cutting the red tape and doing that, so the Commissioner is very keen to be part of this area.
She's part of Blackall Tambo, and there's been some measurable few businesses that have got businesses in Tambo and Alpha have said to me the assistance that she has been able to provide them is around things like financial record keeping, believe it or not, just a simple little thing like some training on how to use cloud-based accounting and tap and go payment options to streamline their accounting and their BAS preparation, which she struggled with, and then they provided access to some training, paid for the training, and now she's finding it really easy. So I just thought if we could get part of that and then make our businesses aware of that support, it might help. Because technology can be both a rod for your back, but it also can be a way, if you're short-staffed, technology can help through, like, you know, electronic record keeping is much simpler and quicker than 7 cash books to the general ledger. Although then you've got to employ an IT expert once you get bigger than 1 or 2 people, but still, you know, that technology can be a big assistance if we can get some people to help train people.
I guess it will come about the Commissioner staff, because obviously rents and businesses and increase when COVID was hitting, and it's expanded to be a really good area, and the Commissioner is very positive towards getting small business going with Mr. Farmer as well.
It would be good if we could get that signed on in the new year.
Yep.
Further questions?
So just to comment, Mr. Mayor, that the members of the membership were really happy to see you all in and meet them. The other day.
Sorry about that, I'll put it down. Membership's a great little setup.
332. Somebody moved that the councillor information correspondence be received. Sorry, can't see you if I'm not looking. Councillor Gleeson first, Councillor Arthur seconded. Those in favour? 7-0.
I guess councillors, there's just some letters that come in. The one about building safe, healthy workplace, it's just a survey that was undertaken, but it's consistent with most. It's a good read. It's not specifically related to us, but it's across the board, but it shows where it's going. The one that we had a look at, we got a letter from residents at Bloodwood about the action on their road, which is quite rough, so I haven't passed that through to our works department. We have seen, we've had some discussions on that one. The rest of them, they're just reading. We didn't win the tourism award at the recent LGA conference, but we became a finalist.
The Blonde flavour of the month at the moment. Beautiful blonde.
Without being obvious, we were told we were very, very unlucky. Not to win. Off the record.
Councillor Gleeson.
Mr. Mayor, the health and wellbeing survey, you mentioned that it's good reading. Where did they get where's those stats been taken? Like they've got figures there, 537 people asked.
They would have surveyed members of that organisation.
It was all
all unions, and so it was sent to all local government areas.
It's a union survey, but it's relevant across the boards.
Any discussion here, councillors?
Through you, Mr Mayor, is it worth us as a council asking the same questions of our staff to see how we,
Survey in the new year or something.
whether it individually or like through Outback Futures or like some mechanism of basically asking the same questions of our cohort?
I have no dramas putting a survey to staff about how they feel and give them some options of where they're going.
Oh, especially because some of the areas, no is a high responder in quite a few. Evenly between yes, no and unsure. So the no and the unsure make up 2/3 on some of them, which is,
It's an industry.
Any further questions?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Yes.
When the council receives a letter like the residents of Ludwood Drive, do all the people that signed it, do they get some recognition that the letter's been tabled, or do they just have to keep an eye on the minutes of the meeting, or how do we respond as a council to those group of people?
We'll be in contact with them. The letter came through, which I forwarded on to our Director of Works. I thought it was relevant. It's not a properly formed petition as such, so it didn't come as a petition. I thought it was good information for council seeing. One is we've had a request, second is we'll look at what our options are, we'll respond and fit into our maintenance programs.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, two questions there. Will they get acknowledgement that their letter's been received?
Yes.
It would have come from one person.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's been signed by 8, but only one person would have sent it. We didn't get the same letter 8 times, did we?
It's just one letter.
Yeah.
Working through the signatures and the residents on this.
No, that's all right, thank you.
I mean, until council progresses otherwise, it's in your budget to do some work there. It was in last year's budget to be done work next year on, like it was identified as year 2 of the capital works budget. In terms of upgrading, if there's some maintenance that we can do, that's good. It is, I went for a drive up there this morning. For somebody who lives on a dirt road, I didn't find it too bad, but for somebody who lives in town, I suppose they don't like it. But I wouldn't have thought it was even in the top 20 roads for emergency assistance, but if there's something the Director of Works can do before Christmas as he's shutting down, well, I'd find that could be a good outcome in the short term, because we're looking at long-term solutions for it. Anyway, so that's already been flagged by us. You as council have already indicated to the public that you intend to do something in terms of a capital upgrade there in the 23-24 year. Until you suggest otherwise, that's what's happening.
So that's all, Mr Mayor, I just wanted to, and as you mentioned about dirt roads, like Drummond Slopes has got 100 kilometres of dirt road to get anywhere.
6 are going to be in nowhere near as good a condition as that.
No.
Councillor Plum did raise an issue about speed signage on that road. The speed would be applicable to the exit speed, so the law would state that the speed you're doing off the Landsborough Highway is the speed, the maximum speed you're allowed to do on that section of road. Because it's not a built-up area.
And there's no signage there, so you way from the pull up.
Well, there's not, but the road laws would also say that you're coming onto a T intersection, you must give way to both directions. So, I mean, we could place one there, but the law already says you have to give way when you enter a T section unless otherwise signed, which it's not, so.
No, it's 50k for urban areas if it's unsigned, but 100 kilometres for rural.
The speed of if there's a speed sign applicable to the major road, the feeder road has the same speed in an unbuilt up area unless otherwise signed. So whatever the speed is on the Landsborough, which I did not check this morning, but whatever it's 100, then it's technically 100 on that feeder road because it's not a built-up area.
And there is an inherent risk in putting a 100k sign on dirt roads without other signage to say unsealed road, drive to prevailing conditions.
Which is why transport main roads don't. So if you look at the Alpha Clermont Road or Alpha Tembo or Marlborough Pennington, there's no speed sign on it because there's an unsealed component on it. They don't want to inherently suggest that you can do 100 kilometres an hour on it because some areas of the road may not be in good enough condition to maintain 100 kilometres an hour. So that's why they say drive to prevailing conditions without speed.
And even a lot of traffic management now, instead of having like that 100k release speed, they'll just have N60. So then that's implied that you drive to prevailing conditions.
Yeah, so it's a council-owned road, Bloodwood Drive. Like part of your strategy to upgrade could include the setting of a speed limit sign there, which we can't do with 5 minutes work, you have to take advice on, but it is council's prerogative. We could set a speed limit of 60, 70, 80, 50, whatever we want off that road. It couldn't exceed 100, but we could set. So it actually, is it 100 there or is it 110?
No, it's not 110, Mr. Mayor.
Right, no. That could be part of the strategy. I detest where roads have their speeds lowered simply because it's not maintained well enough. So I wouldn't suggest we do that as a short-term measure because that looks like we've derelict in our duty. We fixed the road, but it may be council may wish to consider lowering the speed limit to match a built-up area because of, as is indicated in this letter, there's 10 sets of residents that use that road several times a day. Its intersection, its proximity to other turn-offs. So yes, I wouldn't think it out of order for council to consider that, but it shouldn't be, I wouldn't like to consider that simply in terms of maintaining the road surface. We'd have to do that in terms of road safety, and we've maintained the road surface to reflect usage.
What about the size of the turn-off? Did you notice that was too sharp?
Yeah, well, I'm not an expert on that. I think it was too bad personally, but I'm not an expert, so I take an expert's opinion. I think you probably go in 2 cars around there, no worries at all, but as a driver, that is, not as a road engineer.
Yeah, that's right.
That bend is the worst of the corrugation, like undisputedly, that's the roughest part of the road, is either side of that bend, but that stands to reason for not necessarily a maintenance issue, that's just a road usage. Cars are both accelerating and decelerating at that exact location to, one, make the bend, or two, they've taken the turn off the Landsborough and they're accelerating to go to their resident, or as they're coming down, they're slowing down to it. So those areas of dirt roads are always the worst, where you're seeing a rapid acceleration or deceleration. But yeah, and that could be part of the strategy. Improve the turn off. Maybe not the whole length of the road. It might be that area. Once again, as we discussed yesterday, improving from the Landsborough in means that every user of the road gets some benefit to whatever enhancement you make. And if that's the worst, which I personally think it is, you could fix an alignment issue, but also a road surface condition by a very short distance of improvement. But I'd be guided by the experts. Because the further along the road you get, A, it gets less traffic, and B, it's got a friendlier surface to make a road out of anyway. So, yeah, the worst of it certainly is at the front, or on the northern end, I should say. All right. The one thing I will compliment, though, is the very positive, respectful nature of the residents who wrote that letter. Give them full credit. They've just asked very politely, in my opinion, for us to look at the state of the road and whether there can be some improvements. So, full marks to those people for their engagement with us. Can I have somebody move the planning and development report be received, please? Councillor Peoples, seconded Councillor Plum. Those in favour? Questions? Shane, issues?
Generally they're submitted by the planners for our consideration.
I have one question, Mr. Mayor.
Please.
Regarding the chiller box at Marlborough, a couple of years or 12 months, 18 months ago, we as a council have looked at freeholding a piece of land, and then quite a few months ago it come back and we looked at positioning, allowing the position of a chiller box down near the council yard. And now this, can you enlighten me as to where all the movements are and why it's still,
Well, the last
this is a
resolution,
different location again?
yeah, the last location didn't specify. The resolution we passed was a number of different spots were identified in the report to us, and we authorised the CEO through his delegate to negotiate a suitable location.
There was 3 blocks of land from history, somewhere in the Strawberry House.
Washdown Bay, the Strawberries.
Yeah, I was thinking of the washdown moments. Yeah.
So some of that hadn't progressed, that's 18 months ago or 2 years ago, so there hadn't been finalised and this application coming, so it's been just treated on its merit,
So this is a different
different to those blocks.
area. Okay, thank you.
Question? Councillor Russell.
Mr Mayor, we've touched on it before, but can we get that summary table just back at the start?
The building.
Yeah, it just gives us an idea of like the dollar value of the development of previous years and
If the planners don't put it back in, we won't receive the report next meeting.
Yeah, I have asked for that.
I reckon we've asked for it every meeting this year, this financial year. It's been missing since the 1st of July, they haven't put it there.
I have a question, Mr Mayor.
Councillor.
The two blocks of dirt, the 2 blocks, not dirt, the 2 blocks proposed to shift a common boundary, the 2 blocks must be owned by the same persons, obviously.
You're talking about 1.2.
Yeah. An application to the Central Western Aboriginal Corporation seeking the development purposes permit reconfiguration of lots number 2 and lots number 94 and 96 in First Street.
through you, Mr Mayor, not necessarily, because you could have an arrangement with
They could agree
an
to
adjoining property to buy
Could be a
a section
realignment.
of, yeah.
The fact that it's code accessible makes me think that it's either they own both or they have an agreement, a written agreement, because public notification is not required. So, yeah, it's one or the other.
Because at any stage, you can, as long as you don't decrease the lot size past the minimum lot size, you can buy a metre or 2 metres off your neighbour, and that's just a commercial arrangement.
It could be potentially as simple as the fence is built on the wrong alignment, so it's cheaper to change the alignment than remove the fence.
Thank you.
Further questions? Economic Development Report. Tonight, somebody moves agenda item 3.3.4 be received, please. Councillor Hanson, seconded Councillor Plum. Those in favour? Carried.
I guess that's just the reports submitted by Morgan for what he's been working on.
I thought we may have, but it hasn't as of yet been totally received, is some more information regarding the truck stop development. We got a PowerPoint presentation forwarded through, but it's not directly relevant to us, so we're still chasing a little bit more clarity around that proposal to provide you with that information.
Through you, Mr Mayor, was there any date or month envisaged for that, the visiting sessions with council, like just to follow up with that stuff from May?
My thoughts were that as attached to probably the next budget workshop, which we may move to accommodate that, so we can have a 2-day session without a general meeting, backing it in 3 days.
Just I may need a refresher of that session to.
We'll get out, as we do it, we'll get Morgan through Deborah to circulate our notes from last time.
So I wasn't part of that one, that might have been just for a good idea to us.
Okay. 335, can I have somebody move the workplace health and safety, work health, safety and wellness report? Councillor Peoples, second Councillor Plum, those in favour, 7-0. Shane?
councillor seat, we make sure we put at the front there that it's not at council incidents, just to save panic. Last time, generally it's as presented there, so that's probably good to take questions.
Questions?
Oh, sorry, through you, Mr Mayor, the community member incident, does that trigger us going to, like, in the investigation, go and have a look at what the trip was caused by and
Yeah.
remedial works? Yeah.
So our initial response is to go straight to have a look
Yeah.
at causation, where it's at. So don't make too much of that public.
Because it does say tripped over a concrete lift. I assume that's a typo.
So the audit review,
The audit review from the CACS audit was good. You'll see that there. Where they've identified some observations, but generally positive. That's a quality assurance process we have as part of our roads. And our safety management system, which is the one that we operate, is outside of this, but it's contributory.
Does, through you, Mr Mayor, work in that space also help us with accreditation for some of that larger TMR stuff?
This was created for that purpose, so they went out on site to the Barkey, Aramac Road, and checked their depots and their systems. So the good news is there was 2 minor issues to deal with, and the rest of, or 3 minor issues, and the rest are just general observations, which from an audit perspective is good. Normally they find a lot of work to do.
further questions? 336. I will invite debate before I have a formal resolution here if required.
Mr Mayor, can I just ask the prohibited tree list? We've got palms. I noticed we've got a lot of palms in our parks and all over the place. Is there a reason why palms are a problem for sewerage or? See a few just here. I just asked the question.
You're asking the wrong person, but I'll flam it off to somebody else.
I wish Danny was here. This obviously was something come to council previously, but you never added the list of trees that you agreed on, so that's what this is about, was to add the list, but that being part of that.
Questions on notice.
Yeah.
I'll put it to the questions on notice.
Well, then we better defer it till we might defer a decision on this until we have that advice. Yep, so
As well, so.
Plus, Mr Mayor, I have a multitude of questions.
we better wait till the officer
Let's wait
returns.
till Jenny comes back, who's the author.
Can I
Mr Mayor,
have
was this more relevant too for our footpaths? This
Yes.
policy as
It's
well?
really
Yes.
under the power line, I think, on that, broad influence.
But to council people's questions, palms cover a wide span of everything from that to a palm that only grows this high.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that to me is exclusive of all.
I've no drama, leave that till Jenny's.
Can I have a procedural resolution, please, that we move to agenda item, consideration of agenda item 341? Moved Councillor Gleeson, seconded Councillor Peoples, that we move to agenda item 341. Those in favour? Carried. Can I have somebody now move that we receive that report? Moved Councillor Plum, seconded Councillor Arthur. Those in favour? 7-0. Plum, Arthur. Simon, unfortunately you do not have good news for us this morning. I stayed awake too, so I assume you did.
Yeah.
It was a crushing defeat
Should we get the tissues
of
or
the
what?
Pakistan cricket team by the English cricket team overnight. The only thing worse than being beaten by Australia in the cricket of Pakistan is being beaten by the Poms, so my sincere condolences today for your...
Good thing there was that no one's gonna critic about that pitch again.
No,
They want it there.
1,300 runs for the season and they still got a result. So anyway, sorry, we digress.
We have financial problems.
Do you have anything of note before I go to questions, Samad? Do you want to, has there been any significant? 189.
Thank you. The major item here, Mr. Mayor, is the, you know how we started doing the claimed and unclaimed item for TMR contract.
Yes.
As per calculations I've done for our system, we are due to receive about 3 million just in contract works through Director of Works, including RMPC. All the claims have been put in and we're up to date, and the figure would be a bit higher than I just mentioned. But Director of Works can confirm that.
So councillors, we are completely up to date, is what Samad's at, with our RMPC claims and our acquittals. And Samad has just asked, sorry, Chris, for you just to confirm that the amount will be a little higher than $3 million in claims that are sitting with TMR for payment. Is that correct?
I think I counted roughly on Friday closer to 4.5, I think.
Because, through Mr. Mayor, my figures don't have RMPC claims yet in them, so it should be higher.
You would anticipate payment of that before end of month?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Mayor. I mean, the comment from TMR was it's the first time we've been 100% in the last 5 or 6 years, so.
So, Mr. Mayor, that increases our sustainability at least another week and month and a bit.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to revise the sustainability framework of calculation, but definitely will increase by a month. Because this new sustainability framework come out from the State Department and QAO now, so I'll try to follow their sustainability framework, which they used to have one for the whole state. Now they've divided into regions, so our sustainability metrics have changed a bit, so I'll work on that and bring a more precise figure to the table next meeting.
I think a general comment, like Ken, is just staff are being very proactive in getting our claims and acquittals in, which is really good.
I know it's the season to be jolly, but it just fills my heart with joy, and I'll use all of the puns in the world. I think it is absolutely incredible work by our finance manager and the director of works and all of your staff that we can sit here and openly say that all of the claims for road project maintenance and construction that are due to be lodged have been lodged. For 2 reasons. One, it's money that we've spent, so we should have it back if we earned it. And the second reason is the department has been really insistent privately, in private meetings and in public meetings with us about the need for this, because all local governments have been pretty tardy in some respects across the state. The fact that we are completely up to date as we go into the 6-month mark is a testimony to the fact that our team was ahead of the game, because at the same time that the big stick was being brought out into other local governments, we were actually not having the stick applied. So even though Chris felt like it was, because he had both the mayor and the CEO texting him during the meeting, where are our reviews at? He's like, we're actually in front. So really good work in terms of putting that cash in our bank, offsetting money that we've clearly already expended through plant hire, wages and materials procurement. When we're undertaking such large bodies of work, it has a significant impact on our cash flow, and you are minimising the spikes and troughs by being very proactive in this space. So both of your respective teams, through the CEO's guidance, are to be congratulated because that is fantastic work. Questions, please.
Not necessarily, well, it is a question, Mr Mayor, through you. With our sustainability graph, is it possible to have it in, like say, quarters, as in 3.25, 3.5, because we jump from, and I assume it's a rounding, like we round it up to 3 months, and then if it's 3.4 months, it stays down at 3, and then as soon as it clicks over to 3.6 months, it goes up to 4.
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, the way the sustainability framework is designed, this is done on the basis of how QAO wants us to do.
Yeah.
So usually it is by the solid month. You like explain months in decimals would be not realistic. That's why I try to put my pay periods on the side.
Yeah,
So
right.
it suggests that it's
3 plus
over 3
4.
months.
Yeah, okay.
paid,
Yeah,
but-
okay.
Yeah, not quite yet,
Not
4
quite,
months.
yeah. But I can mention on the left hand side how much would be to achieve 3 months, and that might give a dollar value how much it is over the 3 month mark.
Yeah, okay, we can do that. Yeah. Thank you.
The trends, like we've come down a little, but I would suspect we're going back up to 4 because of two things, rates and TMR claims over the next month. We'll see 4 quickly. So that moving, the other thing is if we could put in there what our, if it's maybe not a 3-month quarterly graph, what our rolling,
5 month average or?
yeah, what our rolling 3-month average
3
is, what
months
the quarterly
quarterly
average is. If that might answer, might solve both. We're still complying with QAO's.
Yeah, once looking at that, Mr. Mayor, the new sustainability frameworks are trying to enhance
Yes.
this in a better way. It's just one graph, but we can make it more descriptive.
We might bring back what the sustainability process is and the changes that council's on there.
Yeah, okay.
All right, any further questions? We'll be returning to project progress report after we do the next session. So, mate, you're going to have a period of, but you'll come with us for morning tea, no doubt. But as soon as we reconvene, we're going to planning at 11 o'clock. So that could probably take us till lunch. So it may be after lunch before we complete your sections. Or it may be before. So don't go too far away. Don't go to Longridge. All right, we will adjourn, please, for the official tree planting.